Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome. I am Audra Mitchell, and on behalf of the Massy Learning Institute, I warmly welcome you to today's webinar topic, Tools and Steps for Adapting to Change. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's great having you. And to our webinar regulars, thank you for your continued attendance at these sessions. We hope that today's session will be another enlightening and rewarding experience for you all. So, tools and steps for adapting to change. Let's face it, we are all grappling with change and its effects on both our personal and professional lives. And this, coupled with the global pandemic, can be overwhelming and daunting and negatively impact our ability to cope. So to help us better navigate our current circumstances, it is indeed a pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Mrs. Joana Matthews. Joana is a counseling psychologist, educator, and consultant. She's an employee assistance program provider for forward-thinking, employee-centric businesses and believes in evidence-based practices for prevention, intervention, and response. So without further ado, Joana, we warmly welcome you and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Audra, and good morning to everybody. Welcome. I'm so happy to be with you today and to be sharing with you some tools that you can use to deal with the changes that are happening in your life right now, and of course, the inevitable changes to come. Before we begin talking about the content that I have prepared to share with you, I would like for us to just breathe together. Yes, I know the counselor is going to do the cliche breathing with you, but it's a cliche that actually works because when we take deep breaths, we pull in a lot of extra oxygen than we would, if we were just taking normal small breaths. And what that does is it sends signals from our brain to the rest of our body to tell us to calm down and relax. And there's a bonus in the sense that it makes us more alert. And if we're more alert, we're able to retain information better. We're able to reflect on that information and make informed decisions. So I would like for us to do a breathing activity together so that we are in a relaxed state and in a place to actually retain the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So on the next slide, you will see a shape that will be expanding and contracting. And what I want you to do is when the shape expands, I want you to breathe in through your nose for the duration of the time that it is expanding. And when it contracts, I want you to push out the air through a small hole through your mouth. When I say small hole, I'm not talking about pushing out the air like you're trying to blow something away. Just open your mouth slightly and push out the air with the same time that the shape is contracting. Okay? So make yourself comfortable wherever you are and let us begin. Breathe in, breathe out. And we're done. So I hope that it was just a minute, yes. And this would have worked for you if the breathing is already in your life. If it's not, I highly encourage that you take it up as a practice of relaxation. My recommendation is that you do it first thing in the morning for about 5 to 20 minutes if you can. It'll put you in a better frame of mind to be able to deal with whatever comes your way. So if there's some negativity coming your way, um, you're in a better frame of mind to deal with it in a more measured response rather than with impulsivity. And I'd also recommend that you do 5 to 20 minutes of it at the end of your day at some point in your nighttime routine so as to calm yourself down and prepare yourself to go into a deep state for rest. So now that we have prepared our minds, let us talk a little bit about change. Change is a very consistent thing in life. It's as certain as death at this point in time. It's our new reality. We live in an amazingly fast-paced and connected world, a very um, distracting world sometimes. Our work environments are constantly being affected by changes in technology, customer demands, regulations, and of course, we are affected by personal changes such as birth, death, getting a new job, losing a job, making new friendships, separating from people. Some changes are good and some are bad, and some are sudden and some happen gradually. So, for example, what we're all experiencing right now collectively, COVID-19, that was sudden. It wasn't something that we were moving towards. We were not preparing for it, um, not in any sense personally. We're talking about personal change today, dealing with personal, how do we deal personally with change? So, change can be frustrating, partly because the information we need to make decisions may not be readily available. Indeed, many of our decisions that we need to make are affected by the fact that we don't have information because those decisions by other people have not been made and the time frames for making them are not firm. So it's causing a lot of uncertainty in our lives. We all react to change differently. The reason being we have different past experiences that may impact the way that we deal with things in our present. We have different personalities, and of course, it all depends on how the change came about. Like I said, if it came gradually or if it was something if it's something that came on suddenly. Pre-COVID time, the World Health Organization shared that 1 in 4 people globally would be affected by a mental or neurological disorder in their life. And what we're seeing now is that there's a rise in anxiety and depression and stress, which were already our top 3 psychological problems globally. So we can safely say that we still have a lot of work to do in terms of coping with and adapting to change. We have to try to move away from reaction and move towards prevention, away from impulsivity and towards intentionality and strategy. Now, although we tend to respond to change in our own way, we all seem to go through the same cycle of transition. But before we talk about transition, let me differentiate change from transition phase. Change is what is happening outside of you, it's situational. So the move that I spoke about, the new role at work, the fluctuations in the economy, COVID, all of those things are happening externally. Transition is what you're going to go through internally, the confusion, the distress, the excitement. William Bridges, a researcher, came up with this transitional model indicating that even though we go through change in different ways, we all go through a similar transition. The first stage being the endings, when we are trying to let go of things. We are trying to work through um, the things that we need to leave behind. Even when change is positive, it comes to an end and something else has to be ushered in. And during this time, unfortunately, you may experience denial and resistance. Um, what that might look like, you might experience loss. As a result, the denial would be feelings of shock and disbelief, having thoughts like, this won't really change anything. Or they said that would happen before and it didn't happen. So I'll believe it when I see it. And eventually you move past that stage because you accept the things that are in front of you. You learn to differentiate between what is and what you think is. So you move past that, and sometimes before going into the neutral zone, we move to resistance because it's happening, but I have questions. I need to complain. We need to challenge things. We need to challenge the status quo because this cannot possibly be happening. We need to push back because even if the status quo is good or bad, it's something that we're comfortable with. And the thought of moving ahead brings anxiety. So there's a little bit of resistance. So something that would be useful during that stage is to gather as much information as you can about whatever it is that you're experiencing so that you can deal with the denial and the resistance by making informed choices. And the only way to make informed choices is to have information. Trying to be in control of whatever it is that you can control and letting go of the things that are outside of your control. So in our current environment where we're dealing with COVID, things that we can control, we know based on the research that is coming out that we can take care of our bodies by washing our hands, putting good food into our system, buying certain medicines or things like vitamin C and so on, putting it into our system. So those are the things that we can control. We can control our routines. We can control the way that we respond to people. We can control the way that we can try to control the way that we respond to our stresses. So if we put some of those things in place, then we are in a better position to move to the next phase of the transition model, which is the neutral phase. This is where we are trying to make sense of things in the midst of the confusion. This is the point at which where most all of the tools and the steps that I'm talking about today, this is where you're going to do the work. This is where your analytical mind is trying to make sense of things. It is that space between your conscious and your subconscious. It is trying to get beyond the frustration and the fear and the confusion from the past. And it is trying to move towards the hope and the excitement about the future. This is the point where you're going to be creative with your solutions. This is the point where you're going to do self-examination and look at your strengths and your weaknesses. Look at the areas that you want to enhance. This is the place for work. And then the next phase in the transition model are your beginnings. This is when you start putting things in place to manage something new. Okay? So at this point in time, reflecting on the first two phases is good only for the purpose of trying to gain some insight. But what would be most useful here is to come up with a strategy to be in control for the next wave of change. And we will talk about ritualization at the end, which is exactly what this is, putting things in place to manage something new. Remember, change is constant, so you're always having to reflect to be able to deal with whatever is coming next. So, having said that, now that we know the transitional stages that we will go through, do you think that we can future-proof ourselves? Is there such a thing? Of course we can future-proof ourselves. I just spoke about change and the fact that it's always happening. It's constant, right? Nothing is static. But we can try to future-proof ourselves. We can try to improve our adaptability quotient. Adaptability quotient is your ability to make intentional change in a rapidly changing environment. Intentional change. You're making a decision. You're making choices based on all of the information that you have, based on your reflection of that information. You're making intentional choices to add value to your life and the lives of those around you. If you're familiar with evolution theory, Charles Darwin is arguably the father of the evolution theory, and he said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." And evidence shows us that that is true. Otherwise, the dinosaurs would still be alive and we would be gone, right? But because the monkey-looking mammal took the time to dig a hole and go underground, Our species have adapted to who we are now because we were scared from the asteroid that came and took away all of the dinosaurs. So our ability to make intentional change based on information we have in a rapidly changing environment is going to be what saves us in the end. Harvard Business Review has identified the AQ as the new competitive edge. Imagine AQ plus your intelligence, which is your ability to learn new skills and apply those skills, plus your emotional quotient, which is your ability to take on other perspectives and demonstrate empathy to others. Imagine that plus being able to adapt when things are rapidly changing. All of those things gives you a serious edge in being able to navigate the things that we go through in life. So, how can we improve or increase our AQ? You remember when you were a little child? You remember that why stage? Those of you who have children, you probably know that all too well. Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? And you keep on thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait for them to get off the stage and move on. And then, as they grow older, they come asking you questions, you direct them to other sources. Go Google it. Go check your dictionary. That's what I bought the dictionary for. But we need to go back to that stage ourselves. We need to be curious. We need to have a growth mindset. We need to continue asking questions, realizing that the world is constantly changing. We need to ask questions whether we think they're stupid or not. Curiosity helps us to see the world from multiple perspectives. And being willing to learn from that realization will improve our AQ. Now, if you're going to be curious and ask questions, you need to be tolerant and actually wait for the answers. So be open to change. Be patient with yourself, be patient with people around you, and be open to change. Ask the questions and be willing to actively listen to the perspective. Sharing perspectives will help you to increase your AQ. Accepting things for what they are rather than what you think they are will increase your ability to think flexibly, right? Another thing to improve your AQ is learning how to calm our minds and bodies, as I demonstrated with you at the start. If we are not calm, we are not as able to take in information in the best way. Another thing that is very important is understanding that the more we learn, the less we know. A lot of philosophers along the way have said it, starting with Aristotle, Socrates, Einstein has said it. A lot of modern successful people have said it. The more we learn, the less we know. Or sometimes it's said, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. You should have a thirst for knowledge. Just because you have gone to school and learned a skill or have learned a trade from recognizing what somebody else is doing, observing what somebody else is doing, or you've learned something by practice, doesn't mean that you should stop there. Don't allow yourself to be stuck because the world is changing around you. Things are changing around you. So in order for you to adapt, in order for you to be able to deal with that in a positive way, in order for you to cope with that in a positive way, continue learning. And when I say continue learning, I'm not talking about necessarily enrolling back in school. You can, if that is an option, and you can do that. But you can do other things as well. Read books, figure out what you're interested in, and do research on it. Attend webinars. What you're doing right now is a good thing. Continue doing it. Find out who the experts are in the area of your interest and follow them on social media if that's your thing. Invite people to have conversations with you about things that you're interested in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything academic per se. It could be things like you want to understand what mindfulness is all about or spiritual growth is all about. You want to understand how to learn. Engage in lifelong learning. Our brain has the ability to continue to grow, to continue to form new connections. So we have the ability to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. And I'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. Okay, so let us discuss some steps and tools that we can use to improve our lives while change is happening around us. First thing, we need to learn how to relax. Okay, so in addition to the strategy I exposed you to earlier, which is deep breathing, another thing that you can do is exercise. Exercise, as you know, releases chemicals that make you feel happy, such as endorphins and dopamine. But it also helps to get rid of chemicals that may be making you sick. And the sickness can be mental, it can also be physical. The mental can also manifest physically, right? Worst case scenario, it leads to death. So this is something to be taken very seriously. Take the time to find a way to exercise, whether through hiking, doing something else in nature, cycling, walking with friends or family members while physically distancing, of course, doing something at home using YouTube or a DVD that you might have if you still use DVDs. Or if you're lucky and you have equipment at home, doing something at home, keeping your blood flowing, right? Our brain absorbs our brain uses 20% of the oxygen that comes into our blood. We need to be able to continuously pump oxygen into our blood. Another thing that you can do is to make sure you're taking the time to form quality human connections. It has the same effect on your body as exercise does. It makes you happy. It makes you happy, and it releases chemicals that also deals with takes away sickness. So take the time to make quality human connections, meaning be around people who are supportive and sympathetic to what you're going through. Be around people who will tell you the truth, but in a gentle way. Be around people that you can share experiences with, not just tell experiences to, but share experiences with. That will make a difference to your life. And of course, another way of relaxation is doing things that you enjoy by yourself: reading, crafting, cooking, exercising, playing games. All of those things are things that you may enjoy. Self-care. Another tool that we can use to deal with changes is taking care of ourselves. How do we do that? I'm only going to talk about a few. Sleep is a big one. What is the purpose of sleep in the first place? It is meant to replenish our mind and our body resources. We know that when our sleep is impaired by oversleeping or not sleeping, our mood as well as our productivity are affected. So first and foremost, you need to attend to your environment. Make sure that you are sleeping in a cool and dark room. Darkness is important because this is it helps us to produce melatonin, which is a hormone that we need to regulate our sleep-wake cycle. In the same light, try not to be looking at any screens at least 20 to 30 minutes before bed. So put off the phone, put off the TV, do something else at least 20 to 30 minutes before bed. Because research has shown that the blue rays that come from that actually interfere with our production of melatonin, which of course has the consequence of interfering with our ability to get into a deep sleep state. So creating a routine around sleep time is very important, because basically a routine is telling your brain to prepare. It is giving you an indication that sleep is coming, and your brain tells your body to start to relax so it can go into rest state. Talk to your doctor about what are the best and worst sleeping positions for you. It will change depending on whatever illnesses that you may have. but science shows that the two most common and best sleeping positions are sleeping on your side, preferably your left side because of the heart being there and the pumping of blood and the circulation that needs to happen, or sleeping on your back. Okay. And then finally, it is important for you to deal with your thoughts before you go to bed. When you are sleeping, you are still alive. There are parts of you still operating, parts being your subconscious. And if you do not take the time to process the things that you have gone through throughout the day, or the things that didn't happen, or the things that were said, or the things that were not said, all of those things, your subconscious will fight to work on them while you're sleeping. And that might cause night terrors. It will cause interrupted sleep. So one of the things that you can do is probably journal. Talk about, write out the things that you went through. What are the things that you learned? What will you be applying? What things you want to change, right? Take the time to write what you're grateful for, because that makes a huge difference. Again, it releases certain chemicals in the brain that makes you feel good. If you're the kind of person who actually has a psychological problem like depression or stress, and you have the added problem of having persistent dark thoughts when you are getting to a place of rest because you're not being active and there are not many people around you, one strategy that can work for you is something called cognitive restructuring. It's like shuffling a deck of cards in your mind. The brain cannot handle doing two difficult things at once. It can handle doing a difficult and a slow. You can watch TV and you can iron at the same time. But you cannot watch TV and concentrate on the conversations happening in the movie or the series or whatever it is you're watching on TV and have a conversation about something that matters to you. Okay? So cognitive shuffling takes a lot of your brain energy. And what it is, let's say you're looking at the word journal. You can do this with numbers as well, but let me just use a word as an example. You're looking at the word journal. For each letter in the word journal, you're going to come up with a series of letters until you get fed up and tired and you fall asleep naturally. So J, Jonah, jug, Jamaica, jet. I've run out of J's, so I move on to O, etc., etc., etc. The activity keeps you grounded in the moment and relaxes you. And it will help to keep away the persistent dark thoughts if you practice it and if it becomes a habit. Another way to take care of yourself, learn to say no. Learn to say no. Take back control of your time. As many of us may have learned in the last few months, when we work from home, we're pretty much working everywhere all the time. So that, of course, leads to stress and other things. But through strategic scheduling, you can boost your efficiency, you can regain a sense of control. And of course, there's the bonus of hopefully being able to motivate yourself. Of course, we know there's extra pressure on your time because of the COVID-19 environment. But the number one way to deal with anxiety is to plan. So create a plan. But in order to make it work, you have to put boundaries in place. Don't answer an email every single time one drops in your inbox, for example, or a WhatsApp message or a phone from a friend. It's not necessary. There should be some sort of conversation happening between you and the people around you about boundaries, about when you're available. Be available when you're available. Don't be available when you're not available. Take a check on things. Okay? Every now and then, shut down. Go into your room, close your door, communicate with your family, communicate with your friends that you're taking a break. Go into your room, shut your door for an hour and half an hour, and do something joy, even if it's sleeping. But take that time. Same thing if you were at work. Shut your door for 1 hour in the day. The world is not going to end. Communicate with the people that you're working with. Indicate to them that you're going to focus on a task. Describe to them what an emergency is to you. So, for example, a fire, somebody is in physical danger or some sort of danger. Those are the kinds of emergencies that would mean it's okay for you to come and interrupt that hour. During that hour, try to focus. There's a lady at the University of California, Irvine, Gloria Mark, I think is her name, who concluded a study, and the results are indicating that it takes about 23 minutes and 15 seconds to regain focus after an interruption. 23 minutes and 15 seconds to regain focus after an interruption. Multiply that by the number of times you're interrupted by somebody or some distraction throughout your day. Although you may try to make up for it by doing things faster or multitasking, because that's the natural way for us to go, right? All that pressure is just continue to increase our stress. So it is better to try to minimize the distractions and focus on a task. It is perfectly okay to take a break, because a break is usually done with purpose and usually planned. Research tells us that we are more effective if we take a break every half an hour, take about a 5 to 15 minutes break every half an hour. Sorry, every hour and a half. Furthermore, for most of us, we are productive in the morning. It all depends, right? So for people who are early risers, that would be earlier in the morning, and for people who are night owls, that would be later in the morning. But research shows that we are most productive in the morning. So try to plan for you to do your most complicated tasks or your most important tasks between 9 and 12, between that, like in that morning period of your day. This is the time you should probably plan to do your, like I said, your most difficult task. Breaks can be micro breaks, a few seconds, or you just get up and stretch your legs or go for a coffee or drink of water. And then of course you can take proper breaks, where you go do something you enjoy, or like, meet somebody for coffee, or you can tell I like coffee, right? Because I'm using coffee a lot. You can meet somebody for coffee, or go exercise at that point in time, or have lunch, not at your desk. Have lunch. Take the time to go to the lunchroom or go to your dining table and have lunch. And that takes us to another thing that you can do to take care of yourself. Mindful eating. Mindful eating is basically having your meals with a strong sense of awareness without judging yourself. Just being aware of what it is you're doing, what you're putting into your body, recognizing how it makes you feel, paying attention to taste, to level of satisfaction. Okay, try it. This practice has been shown to make a difference for people who are anxious, stressed, or depressed. And it's actually been shown to help with weight loss as well. Now, self-care and relaxation are absolutely needed. But without reflection, we're basically zombies. We're basically running like programs. We don't learn from experiences. We learn from the interpretations we put on experiences. We learn from reflecting on the experience. You see, the thing is, your brain records your past. How you think and feel affects what you do and how you respond to things. How you think and feel affects what you do and how you respond to things. So imagine if for the majority of time you're worrying about your problems, you're thinking of the past and worrying about what's coming or what's not coming. If you do not deal with those thoughts, they impact your future. Thoughts come into our head at any point in time. There's nothing we can do about it. We cannot prevent the thought from popping in. When the thought gets there, though, we can do stuff about it. We can avoid getting stuck in our negative thinking patterns that then influence the way we deal with ourselves and we respond to people. If you cannot think bigger than you feel, the likelihood of you repeating the same behavior is extra high. And eventually your thoughts will predict your future, so to speak. And you operate like a program because you have given up your free will by not dealing with the thoughts. At a certain point in our lives, we develop something called metacognition. It is our ability to think or be aware about the fact that we can think, the fact that we can feel, and the fact that we can behave. By the time we are past our teenage years, we have that ability. And a lot of what we have learned at that point also has almost been hardwired because we have been memorizing a set of repeated behaviors and emotional states. So sometimes we can really get stuck in our thought. These are just some unhelpful thinking styles. So for example, sometimes we have all or nothing thinking, or people call it black or white thinking. There's no in between, you know? So example, if I'm not perfect, I have failed. Either I do it right or not at all. There's the very popular mind reading, where we imagine what we know what other people are thinking, or we try to predict the future. And it's usually based on one little thing, which takes us to overgeneralizing. Something has happened to us once in our lives, and all of a sudden the narrative in our mind is it's always or never. You see how she talked to me there? She always talking to me like that. Is she really always talking to you like that? Or that happened one time? And your interpretation of that one time was it's a horrible thing. And you did not you did not go past that interpretation. You did not go past, well, it was a horrible thing. I did not enjoy it. Let me see what I can do about it. Let me see what I can put in place to make sure that that experience doesn't happen again. Or if it happens again, I will respond that way. So because your thought processes don't go past that point, you get to the place of overgeneralizing or awfulizing based on one single event. Another example is magnifying or minimizing. So it's either you're blowing things out of proportion or you're not taking things seriously enough, right? So sometimes we get stuck in our thoughts. Changing the way we think can be hard work, but it is work that can be done whenever you're ready, because the brain is just an awesome organ. There's something called neuroplasticity or brain plasticity, and basically that's just the brain's ability to change and adapt as a result of experience. Think about it this way. Every time we remember past experiences, we activate the same circuits and chemistry in the brain that made us feel horrible. And we actually feel horrible in the present. Can you imagine? Thinking about something that made you feel horrible in the past makes you feel horrible in the future. Now follow me. The same way we can get the brain to do that is the same way we can get the brain to map out a future pathway. Because it means that we have the ability to decide how to feel and behave based on what we choose to think. We can predict our future, so to speak, a little bit with the thoughts we let simmer in our brain. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself to challenge those negative thoughts. Because like I said, don't just let those thoughts stay there. You have to do something about them. You can use thought stopping techniques. You can use meditation, or you can use activities like that, reflective self-talk activities. Is the thought helpful? Is the thought based on facts or your opinion? Explain that. What evidence do you have for what you're thinking? What evidence do you have that it is true? What evidence do you have that it is false? Is there another reason that could explain this thought? And if your thoughts are true, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? And in general, this is just a good strategy to use to be able to maneuver things. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? And if your answer is one that is not kind to yourself and not kind to others, then go back and do the work. Go back and ask the questions until you come up with a worst that could possibly happen that is kind to yourself and kind to others. So you're relaxing, you're taking care of yourself, you're doing the extremely important work of reflecting. You must rehearse. I'm sure you've been hearing from the time you were a child, practice makes perfect. How do you want to think and feel and behave? What do you want to do? By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing the action of what you want, you're basically creating a map to the future. So just to make sure you're following me, remember I said that the brain records our past experiences. So if you're imagining what you want repeatedly, it becomes a new memory and basically becomes a map to your future. I know you're going to tell me, but how am I supposed to make myself feel something before I actually experience it? If you repeatedly visualize what you want, so let's say what you want is a peaceful life. You're going to imagine what it looks like, who is there, where is there, what are you doing there, and vividly imagine it. Eventually, that thought starts to impact the way that you behave and, of course, how you feel, because the brain begins to recognize it as a memory because you have been rehearsing it. You have been mentally visualizing it. And if you make a slight adjustment to your thinking, not looking for something to cause something else, not looking for, so for example, not looking for that promotion to feel successful or that relationship to feel love. If you make an adjustment to looking within and problem solving, you can create, you can be innovative, and as a result, you'll become more in control of your world. You will become the thing, you will become what causes the things to happen, as opposed to waiting for something to happen to you. You will cause promotion because you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your strengths, you're looking at the steps that you have taken so far in your career to get to that place. And then you will get to a place like, okay, so I've done this. Probably if I do this next step, it'll take me there. You see? So you start to cause things. If you start to develop values within yourself, look within yourself, enjoy the things that you like, look towards finding your own individual meaning, look towards building human connections with just everybody and anybody. You begin to love yourself. You begin to understand your strengths and weaknesses in such a way that you love yourself. And so therefore you will manifest, so to speak, what you want. You will attract that kind of personality, the kind of personality that will add value to your life and to the people around you. And at this point, you have relaxed, or you're relaxing, you're taking care of yourself, you're reflecting, you're rehearsing. Rehearsal should come with self-accountability. Self-accountability is about being honest with yourself and taking responsibility for your actions and responses. Examine your successes and failures alike so that you can learn from them. And once you've got to that point, it is time for you to ritualize. The habits you created to survive will no longer serve you when it's time to thrive. Get out of survival mode. New habits, new life. Put new things in place to be able to cope, be able to adapt. And by new things, I'm talking about all of the things that I talk about. But a very important tip is, while you're putting all of those new things in place, you want to be able to take away the negative things, the things that are impairing your relationships, that are impairing your ability to do your work. So things like gambling, risky behaviors, gambling, smoking, drinking, substance abuse, pornography, all of those things. As you put good things in your life, you remove good things, you remove bad things, and you will become a mentally strong person. And with that, I thank you for your time and for listening. And I am open to questions now.
Oh, Joana, all I can say is wow. So much rich information. So I now will hand you over to Rennie Bonnet,
okay,
our moderator for the Q&A session.
Are you seeing me? Everything is okay?
Yes, we're seeing you.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Audra, and thank you, Joana. Our first question this morning is from an anonymous person.
Okay.
And we have 10 links for this particular question, so it's a popular question.
Okay.
Mentally, it may be hard for people set in their ways or who are risk averse to want to make a change. What tips or advice can you share to help these type of persons?
Mhm. So you're talking about resistant personalities. Um, with resistant personalities, I would highly recommend that you provide them with options. If you have a trusting relationship with that person, I don't know if you're talking about in your personal relationships or your work relationships, but either way, if you have a trusting relationship with that person, you can try to confront the person in the sense where you're showing the discrepancy between what they're saying and what they're doing, or what they're saying they're thinking and what it is that they're actually doing. And once you've shown them that discrepancy, you provide them with options being, you can go and talk to someone who is a professional in the area and might be able to provide you with even more evidence-based options. You can indicate to them practical solutions. So if it's somebody at work, you can show them different things that they can do at work that will be able to help them, such as taking a break and instead of going out and playing around on their phones, sitting in the lunchroom and actually interacting with people, because forming a social network actually helps you. So yeah, so first, have a trusting relationship with the person, use confrontation, and provide them with options. Because at the end of the day, you cannot change a person. You can show them the direction, and they still have to be able to take that step. You can encourage them by helping them to prioritize the things that they need to do, and so they can see which step to take first, possibly. Yes, hopefully that helps. Renee?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here is your second question. There are also challenges with the initial reactions of people.
Mm-hmm.
Some blame and some may get angry. How do you sell the change concept without having that reaction?
Well, you can prevent that reaction. It just means that they're not ready to move ahead in terms of the stage in transition that you may be at. They're probably not there yet. Um, Repeat the question, please.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
There are also challenges with the initial reactions of people. Persons blame or get angry. How do you sell the change concept without having that reaction?
Okay. Again, by providing them with as much information as possible, with as much foresight as possible. What is the direction that you're going in? What is your end goal here? Getting other people to help you with the buy-in, by sharing their experiences, by indicating what their perspectives are about whatever the change is. So if the question was a little bit more specific in terms of what kind of change you're talking about, is it personal change or company change, right? But either way, providing them with more information and giving them a clear understanding of where it is you're going with that change will actually be helpful.
Okay, all right. I'll move on to the next question,
Mhm.
also from an anonymous person. What if you just don't like being around people? Is that going to have a negative impact on your life? Or could
Not
it be replaced?
necessarily.
Or could it be replaced with another activity?
Uh, so that's a very deep question. Um, One that I would like to explore in a counseling session, because that would mean that I have more of your story and there's a better understanding and I'll be able to tailor my response. But I will say this, there's no problem in being a loner, as long as you enjoy your company, you love yourself, and you have some purpose to your life. You're not just, on earth taking up oxygen. You have some purpose to your life. There's no problem with it. But the fact of the matter is, in as much as we came alone and we have to live alone, at some point in time we have to relate. So even within your aloneness and your need to be alone, you still need to be open to learning the skills that are necessary to be able to interact with others. So communication skills, being able to validate other people, being able to listen with empathy, um, and listen actively. All of those things are important for the times that you do choose to relate.
All right, this next one is quite similar as well. From
Mhm.
another anonymous person, quality human connections, as you mentioned, it is extremely important for our health.
Mhm.
However, given that one may not have quality human relationships at the moment,
Mhm.
what else can you do to ensure that you are physically and mentally healthy?
So in addition to all of the things that I spoke about, taking the time to meditate, because reflection is important. You need to be aware of who you are, where you are in the world, what it is that you're doing, where you're going. So meditation is important. Reflection is important. Um, Taking care of your physical self by paying attention to what you eat, um, doing exercise, increasing your ability to understand things by upskilling or enhancing your knowledge base. All of those things are things that you can do alone and um, sort of improve yourself so that when you do have quality relationships, you're sharing your authentic self. You're sharing yourself with a full understanding of who you are, where you're hoping to go, what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay, all right, thank you. Here is our next one. Self-care may be difficult for busy people caught up in work and home duties. In addition, there may be no support to enable one to take time for yourself, even if it's an hour. What can you recommend to someone in this position? And secondly, how can one avoid feeling guilty for taking time away from work and home to focus on yourself?
I suspect that's either a mother or a father.
Yeah.
I'm there. I understand totally. You know what? At the end of the day, you are in control of your own joy. When you're busy, you're giving away your power. Like I said during my presentation, be available when you're available. Don't be available when you're unavailable. Take the time. Simply just take the time. Whether it's in the shower, there's something in one of the techniques that I use in counseling for people who have serious anxiety and depression and have a lot of persistent dark thoughts throughout the day, is called worry time, where I introduce them to the idea of thought stopping and indicate to them that once they stop that thought, they tell themselves that they will do their worrying later. It sounds retarded, but it works. And basically, what it is you tell yourself, I can't deal with this now, but I'm going to deal with it later. And you take that time later to think about all of the things that you need to think about, but with a purpose. The purpose is to solve the problem. Listen, you can do worry time lying down on your bed just before you sleep. You can do worry time in the shower. The point is, take the time. Nobody can tell you that you cannot take the time. So just simply grab the time. Tell people that you are unavailable. You're not talking about taking an entire year. You're talking about taking a half hour, taking an hour for yourself. Leave for lunch and go sit down at a coffee shop or a bistro or a restaurant, well, when things open up, by yourself, or go sit on your porch by yourself and have your lunch there. Do those kinds of things. And you don't have to do it every day, but you do it every now and then, and it actually boosts your energy. It boosts your ability to refocus and to read. So take the time. And the person mentioned sometimes you don't have support. There are ways around it. So, for example, right now, I don't have support. I have to do this, and I have two children here. My husband is in a different island, right? What did I do? I left them with a lot of snacks. I bribed them. I made promises for after this session and before my next session. I left them with entertainment, and That's it. I provided a distraction activity, and I provided them with sustenance so that I would be able to have an hour to do this. It's about finding little ways around it and taking one little step at a time. I'm only focused on this hour. When this hour is finished, I'm going to focus on the next. And those are just little strategies that I use to make sure that I am present and that I am functioning while all of this change is happening around me. Right. So I hope that helps.
I like those tips. All right. Our next, well, this one is a comment, really. It's not a question from another anonymous person. Mindfulness is one of the best coping mechanisms that I've used, and it helps with managing the stress that I face. The trick is to keep up the mindful practice so that it becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And that is why it's important to ritualize, make it part of your routine. You know, the same way we need a little bit of darkness to sleep because of the production of melatonin, light therapy. You get up in the morning and you just go straight to your window and you open up the curtains or the louvers or whatever it is, you have the blinds, and you let the light in. And what that does is it sends signals to your body to say, wake up, be alert, get a move on, right? While you're standing there, think of something that you're grateful for. Then go do your usual things. Make your bed, brush your teeth, get your coffee, your tea, whatever the case is, your routine is. But the point is, if you do that every single day, and that's just one little part of your day that you're being mindful. You can be mindful at lunch. You can be mindful in your conversations in terms of, I mean, the difference between who I am now and who I was 2 years ago with how mindful I am in my conversations, because at the end of the day, I take the time to reflect through the conversations I've had throughout the day and how I responded to things. And I try to learn from them. What am I going to apply? What am I going to kick out the door? What do I need to change? And every day, I consciously try to make a difference so that I will be continuously growing. Otherwise, like I said throughout the presentation, I'd just be a robot living a programmed life based on my past experiences. I get up thinking about the same problems I had yesterday. It means that I'm going to make a choice based on that thought. And that choice leads me to a behavior based on, you understand, and it's just a vicious cycle. But the key is to be mindful and to reflect. And through that reflection comes growth. So good comment.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Yep.
When you have to deal with someone who is always in a sad mood, especially since the pandemic, and you know have to deal with your own stress level as well, what would you recommend to do with this situation in the change process?
Very good question. The number one way to, I'm going to treat this like we're talking about depression. The number one way to deal with depression is to increase your activity level. Now, it's extremely difficult when somebody is under a dark cloud to try to get them out of it. Before you can even do the mind work, you have to do the body work. And the body work would be the relaxation strategies I'm talking about, the breathing and so on. So what I would say to you is to come up with some sort of activity that gets them involved. So something like, you know, come have lunch with me. And after you've done that a couple of days and they've actually made the effort to come have lunch with you, whether they're talking to you or not, do something like, okay, let's go for a walk, and then make it a thing. And after that happens for a couple of days, do something else. So basically you're going up a ladder of activities. Eventually the activities will open the door to doing the thought work, where you will introduce them to, you know, a different perspective on what is happening. You will introduce them to information that will make them feel better about what is going on, because change is constant. What is happening now is not going to be what is happening in a couple of months, right? And that can be a comfort. It can also be something that can lead to anxiety. But it's important to be able to have a dialogue about it. Dialogue about it, but with a purpose of problem solving. Vent, yes, but don't vent and then ruminate, because rumination is just going to aggravate the problem. So allow the person to talk with you when they get to that point, but collaboratively problem solve.
Okay, great. So Renee, thank you for moderating our Q&A session. Joana, once again, let me thank you for so generously sharing with us such powerful insights, and most importantly, for impacting lives as powerfully as you do. You know, we certainly will invite you back to be here with us, because I know some persons may have had some questions. So for those listening, if anybody had any question that you really wanted to get answered that didn't get answered, please, you know, reach out to us, send it to us, you know, and I know Joana will be more than happy to respond to your question.
Yeah.
So I want to thank our MLI team, without whom this will never be possible, and to Terence Nimblett from Massy Technologies, our partner. Our next webinar will be held on July the 22nd. To my Massy family, we want to encourage you to continue to level up, stay safe, continue to learn, to grow, to evolve, to ask your questions, because it is only in so doing we can weather these storms. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Yeah. I was asking if I don't stay.
I'm a force for good. I'm a force for good. I know you're Massy. There's so many things I can do, and I'll do it for you. Yeah, you're a part of this family, no, and I'm creating value. If you need